Okay, so we'll start now. All right, well, everything you've been hearing about is basically quantum theory, in particular what Cohen was just talking about, and everything I think he says is correct for quantum theory, but it won't be correct for parapsychological phenomena, which I don't want to discuss right now. I want to give first a short, straight talk, and then if people want to get into consciousness and parapsychology, like Julia's experiments, we can. So this is the abstract that's published, and rather than reading it, just the last few sentences that are in bold, which actually correspond a little bit to what Cohen just said. The post-quantum back reaction corresponds to computation around closed time-like curves, in which P equals NP, with profound implications for quantum cryptography code breaking. We expect Prigogine pumped open dissipative systems with frolic macro-quantum coherence to be such post-quantum systems which obey a nonlinear, non-unitary dynamics in a total extension of quantum theory to a new level. So let me start. Sutherland has it right, at least for the particle case. He still has to work on quantum electrodynamics, but he's working on that, I hope. No need for configuration space to handle entanglement. This is all, again, the block universe. I don't agree with Ruth. I think there's no contradiction between three-dimensional dynamics and flows and the four-dimensional block universe. And I think Minkowski first explained it very well when he introduced the concept over 100 years ago. Okay, the Bohm pilot wave theory made relativistic using a variation on Aharonov's retrocausal weak measurements in the Lagrangian-based action principle in the block universe. I'm just reviewing what Rod said yesterday. He didn't emphasize this last part. Einstein's action-reaction organizing principle formulated as part of the non-statistical post-quantum weak Lagrangian connecting the pilot wave to its vehicles. In his particular model, the vehicles are particles, but in general they can be classical local gauge field configurations, electromagnetic gravity, strong, weak, etc. So let's continue. Okay, now we're going beyond anything you've heard in this talk so far, except when talking about parapsychology and the whole controversy over signaling. When Yaki Aharonov says God plays dice in the universe to save free will, well, unfortunately that doesn't happen, I would say, when you get to the sorts of things Julia is talking about and consciousness itself. But let me go on. Bowman Hiley, this is the big epiphany for me in 1994. Before that, I was just in the dark and blinded in the fog of Copenhagen, John Wheeler kind of vague kind of things that are very exciting poetically, but actually I think are a false trail. But when I picked up this book, Undivided Universe, 1994, I read Bowman Hiley in The Undivided Universe mentioned that no entanglement signaling fails when there is post-quantum action-reaction between the pilot wave and its vehicles. So of course in the traditional interpretation of quantum theory, there are no vehicles, there are no hidden variables. So of course they'll never understand this, they'll never get to that point. Well, except Stapp sort of got there in his retro PK paper. Okay, the non-statistical, the word non-statistical is important, which Sutherland mentioned yesterday, because it means the Born rule at this stage, when you include the final boundary condition, the Born rule is irrelevant. The whole probabilistic interpretation of quantum theory is irrelevant at this level. You can get it as a limiting case. The non-statistical retrocausal post-quantum action-reaction piece of the weak Lagrangian must be set equal to 0 in the limiting process to the statistical orthodox quantum theory, with the unbiased, irreducibly, uncontrollably random Born rule in projective strong harmonic measurements. Rod said it's simpler. He said, well, when you average over the future, you get traditional quantum theory, which almost everybody in this talk has been talking about. I won't go into this because There was an important email that Sutherland sent to me about the talk. All right, now, this is the important thing. And now I'm taking a concrete example, just the Dirac equation, spin 1/2, because a concrete example is easy to see than general formulae with Lagrangians and stuff like that in the general case. So now, Sutherland's post-quantum action-reaction factor, when set to 0, is precisely de Broglie's guidance constraint, the original the Broglie version. And what it says is, this is his factor, in his post-quantum term, which is the action-reaction between the pilot wave and the beables, this factor appears there. The minus plus, that has to do with the weak measurements. If the beable is going outside the light cone as like a tachyonic, we're bending backward in time, there's one sign, and if it's on a time like this inside the light cone, there's another sign. That's just a technical point. But the point is this, okay, what U is, U alpha, is the beable particle velocity, fall velocity. Everything's relativistic, and it's locally retrocausal. J of alpha is the pilot wave current density, and rho 0 is the basically the square root of the magnitude of the floor current. So when that is equal to 0, that's the Bohm guidance constraint. What that means physically is that, in this case, the particle beable world lines coincide with the pilot wave as a fluid streamline, so the gradient flow. And that's why, in orthodox quantum mechanics, you can neglect the beables. They're hidden because they're phase locked to the flow of the pilot wave fluid, so to speak. So that's why they're hidden in quantum theory, and you can sort of pretend they're not there and get away with it. But in this new post-quantum case, which by the way is like general relativity, is a special relativity, you can think of orthodox quantum theory as like special relativity, and you can think of post-quantum theory like general relativity, and you can think of the post-quantum back reaction as analogous to space-time curvature, and that's a very nice analogy. All right, so let me go on. So now here is Sutherland's post-quantum free particle Dirac equation. It's free particle. The right-hand side is the back reaction, which is missing in conventional quantum field theory. So this also means that everything Feynman did with the diagrams, everything done in quantum field theory, is a limiting case, which nobody's done it yet, so hopefully maybe other people start working on it. All that has to be extended now to this new domain. It's like everybody's been doing special relativity, but you really got to general relativity, all right? So this is the, now you can see the right-hand side, when that's equal to 0, that's the Bohm guidance constraint again, and that's when the beable world lines coincide with the pilot wave gradients. But what happens in post-quantum theory, the hidden variables become unhidden, they're explicit. It's analogous to, like, in general relativity, you have test particles that move along geodesics, but when you apply non-gravitational forces, the test particles move off the geodesic world lines, in the case of finite mass. And there's a certain analogy there, I don't want to push the analogy. So there's new physics here, a lot of new physics. This is some math details, look at some of its papers, defining the quantities. These are weak quantities. Oh, one other thing I should say, Rod is only taking the real part, and I haven't done that yet. I think of this physics in the imaginary part, so I'm keeping everything. And then this is work that nobody understands yet. So because in fact, we know in the Aharonov case, the imaginary part, weak value is measurable consequences, and shown in Afram Steinberg's experiments and other experiments. So that's just a detail. Also, here is Sutherland's the particle beable equation of motion. Notice it's almost like a Lorentz force sort of thing. The first term on the right-hand side is like an electric term, and the second term is kind of like the Lorentz force, kind of like a magnetic kind of effect. And this comes out of his Lagrangian. These are the weak values, of course, the weak values of the pilot wave currents. And all right, now I'm saying the post-quantum action-reaction biases the Born rule in Stapp sense, I think. This is something I'm trying to relate to the things that Stapp said yesterday. Okay, the pilot wave continuity equation now has a new source term. Therefore, the Born probability current density flow is no longer conserved. The time evolution is non-unitary, as in pumped open dissipative structures. The theory is also nonlinear, because, and if you look in detail at Sutherland's equations, it's a nonlinear quantum theory, in the sense that Stapp, when he tried to explain Helmut Schmidt's retro PK experiments, Stapp had a nonlinear model, kind of like Steven Weinberg's, and that's all implicit in the post-quantum generalization of what Sutherland has done. But what he actually does is try to get to the orthodox limit, and so all those terms go to zero. All the interesting new physics he puts under the rug. Okay. The theory is also nonlinear because of the adaptive self-organizing two-way relation between the pilot wave and its vehicles. The term two-way relation is in Bowman-Hiley undivided universe. As Elitzer and Valentini independently say, this demands entanglement signaling. And we know from Sutherland's point of view, that means local retrocausal signaling. We never have to talk about non-locality. We never have to talk about fast of light. All of this is, as Sutherland has pointed out, consistent with the spirit, if not the letter, of Einstein's special relativity theory, which we're not throwing out. There's no need for preferred reference frame and all that stuff, but I'm just repeating what Sutherland said yesterday. However, as Sutherland, Wharton, and Price point out, there is no violation of Einstein's special relativity because of the Costa-de-Beauregard zigzags that also eliminate the need for entangled configuration space, as well as not needing Bohm's preferred reference frame. Okay, just repeated that. Oh, by the way, then Costa-de-Beauregard really had this idea back in, I think, 1954, and everybody ignored him. Even when in David Kaiser's book, when he writes about us and how the hippies say physics in the 70s, and where SRI and the CIA and the DIA are funding us to do this, secret, semi-secret remote viewing stuff, and Costa-de-Beauregard came to SRI. And it was there, and but it was so under the influence of John Wheeler and the Copenhagen and the Bohr and the Heisenberg and everything you hear, like what Ruth is talking about, Beyond Space-Time. I wrote a book called Space-Time Beyond. It was a popular book, sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Movies were based on it. And, but it was all wrong. It's all, everything is in my opinion now, is wrong. I'm like Saul who's fallen off his horse, and that's the Old Testament, this is the New Testament. All right. So the action-reaction unhides the vehicles, their paths that no longer coincide with the pilot wave streamlines. Summary. Post-quantum theory is the quantum theory as general relativity is the special relativity. They both depend on back reaction. In the case of general relativity, it's the back reaction of matter on the classical geometry. In the case of quantum theory, it's the back reaction of the Bohm vehicle or the Bell vehicles on the pilot waves. Both logic theories are direct consequences of Einstein's action-reaction organizing principle. And this is why, aesthetically, like in the Dirac sense, because it's so beautiful, it's got to be the case. I mean, Einstein, had it. Special relativity ignores the direct reaction of matter on geometry. Quantum theory ignores the direct reaction of matter and geometry on their pilot waves. Okay, so that's it. So let me stop there on the formal part of the talk. And now we can get a little more speculative, because I do have very definite ideas of free will and consciousness and kind of retrocausal presentiment precognition experiments that Julia is talking about, that Bierman's talking about. And I think I can define free will technically, mathematically, formally in terms of the Sutherland post-quantum ideas as further developed by me. So that nothing becomes not vague anymore. And I also claim that consciousness, our quality, our feelings, our internal thoughts, memories, who we are, our souls, if you want, that's all post-quantum effects. It requires retrocausal signaling, and what consciousness quality are, they are the impressions that from the back reaction of the vehicles on their pilot waves. The pilot waves, in the sense of David Chalmers, his paper in Scientific American on the hard problem, says you need some physical field, which is an intrinsically mental field. The Bohm pilot wave has all those properties. In fact, Bohm himself, if you read his book Quantum Theory before the pilot wave theory, In quantum theory, we talked about Bohr, and even Henry Stab says that the wave function is a thought-like thing. Yeah, it's not only thought-like, it's not only an analogy. It's not, that's what it is. That's the physical part. The physical part of the universe, which is intrinsically, let's call it proto-mental, is the wave function, the pilot wave. Okay, and so I think I'll stop here for
Oh, you have 10 more minutes.
Oh, well, that's okay. We can.
That wasn't stop. That was 10 more minutes.
Yeah. All right. Well, the only again, just let me emphasize, because these are fairly unfamiliar ideas to almost everyone, is that in the post-quantum theory, the Beagles. What are the Beagles? The Beagles technically are the classical parts of the Lagrangian, of Sutherland's Lagrangian, the parts where you let H go to 0. Yeah, that's the Beagle. It's classical physics. Okay. And then in terms of Bohm-Pilot wave theory, the quantum wave function was intrinsically a mental field. It's something which, if you excite it directly from matter, that's consciousness. That's who we are. But we have to have like a giant coherent Bohm-Pilot wave. This is where the Froelich, Herbert Froelich, who I worked with back at UCSD in La Jolla in the 60s, Froelich introduced the idea of that when you have sort of like a laser, when you have an open pump system above threshold, there's a certain critical pumping power. In the living system, it's metabolic rate. Then you can develop macroscopic quantum coherence, which is, again, is a form of spontaneous symmetry breaking, very much like the Higgs mechanism, mathematically very similar. And I claim that's what we have in our brains. I adhere to, or I think Stuart Hameroff's and Penrose's microtubule picture of the seat of physical consciousness in these protein dimers, these little qubits. You know, there are electrons. There are single electrons trapped in these protein dimers in a double potential well. So I'm thinking that's the basic transducer connecting the material classical electromagnetic signals, chemical signals, to the coherent mind field, which is what we are. That's who we are. Now, the other thing is, let me stop. The other thing is that there are certain, as you know, I'm financed by certain powerful people in Silicon Valley, and some of these are tuning into this, and some Israelis too. Maybe setting up a company, a startup company, and the object of that company will be to create naturally human-level consciousness in nano-electronic silicon artificial. So we're talking about conscious androids. There's also, since all these guys at Google, they want to go live forever, there also is the possibility of transcendence. Once you understand physically what the conscious mind is, that's just a physical phenomenon. It's, it's a coherent Bohm-Pilot wave in the brain. It may be possible to download it into this mechanism and actually attain personal immortality. So when I make reference to the Old Testament and the New Testament, there may be more than that meets the eye, but I don't want to get into the occult sort of Da Vinci Code sort of aspects of this, which you can find in my book, Destiny Matrix, which was done in 2002. You're also looking in Kaiser's book, How to Save Physics, and a little bit of that crazy stuff in there. So I'll stop now.
Okay, we have more time for questions. Let's thank our speaker here. Okay, Ruth.
Okay, so given that Rod Sutherland on his first or second slide said that he's working in a static block world.
Yeah, I'm in a block world too. But there's no contradiction with that. I think everything you said about that is wrong, by the way. So
well, I don't hear a refutation. I see a static block world, and I see people saying that dynamical stuff is going on in this static block world. And I haven't
Ruth,
heard.
with all due respect, I don't want to get into this because this is a can of worms.
Okay,
I think,
that's great. Well,
we don't agree with
people
everything. It's
ask
kind of
me,
like the
so I'm
Sunnis.
asking
It's
you.
kind of like the Sunnis and the Shias. But it's a kind of
No.
religious thing.
No,
But I think
it's a
Minkowski explained all this. You don't understand the block universe. In my opinion, I could be wrong.
Well,
but
I
that's
think your
my-
reputation there.
Yeah. Now let me also say one other thing though about what you did say about the sub-empirical realm, all this Heisenberg potential. That's a lot of mystical, excess verbal, philosophical baggage for what the mathematicians call the fiber bundle. Hilbert's based on fibers over space-time, and that's where you get the arrows of time and everything.
Well, that's great.
This is no. I mean, if you read Yang.
Here. We're not talking about how you want to categorize it in terms of a mathematical formulation.
All right,
talking
okay, but I'm
about
saying there is a
ontology.
pretty mathematical
Great,
theory called fiber bundles, which
Okay.
gauge theories use all the time, but
great,
let's not.
okay, that's
well,
not the issue.
Okay. but-
Henry.
yeah.
There were two different ideas that you're not quite clear on. One is the idea that the mind is the product of the brain, basically.
Yeah.
That seemed to be one of your themes. And the other was that somehow mind is more fundamental, that mind is the more fundamental thing.
No, I'm a
Which
Bohmian
side do you
here.
go down?
I'm a Sutherland Bohmian, Sutherland modified Bohmian. The pilot field is an ontological object, it's a piece of the Lagrangian. Anything that you can write down Lagrangian, I'm gonna say is real, physically real. So what Sutherland did, he wrote a Lagrangian, not in the sense of quantum field theory, which is kind of the Copenhagen. He has a Lagrangian, he has a piece for the pilot field in the sense of Bohm's theory. He has a variable part, he has the coupling, the way so the two, okay, I do agree with Ruth that, Hilbert space is an ontological thing, but you don't have to, it can be all done the way Sutherland does it in localized with retrocausality in space-time. You don't have to actually go to configuration space. It's a crutch. We can, but we don't need it. But so I'm saying that the pilot wave is an intrinsic, physical, mental field, okay, in addition to the classical material degrees of freedom, classical physics. And the two couple together, and it's mind-body, that's it. So, that's all you really have to assume, and it's totally physical. It's described by Lagrangians.
It seems like all you have to do is add a few dimensions and you can change a block universe into a free universe.
No, forget that. That's a dead end. You could talk about fiber bundles. Yeah, the information, the wave function is a fiber. Does everybody not know about fiber bundles in mathematics? And the way it's been applied in gauge theory. It's a standard thing. It's textbook. It's textbook. So I say that people have to learn about fiber bundles, and then you realize that the pilot waves are fibers over space-time. They're fibers, and then there's all kinds of connections in the fiber bundle space. Mathematically, space-time, local space-time, is the base space of a fiber bundle. So in that sense, he has larger dimensions. So, when Ruth says you can say it, but I'm talking about fiber bundles, and then everything's more precise, and you can sort of see what you're talking about, and not have to just depend on vague words.
Isn't this if you assume the Sutherland model?
What?
Isn't this if you assume the Sutherland model is working?
I'm sorry, I don't
So
understand.
you're assuming the Sutherland model to start with.
Oh, yeah, of course, yes. The Southern, yes, I'm assuming the Southern, and well, it's the same, it's Aharonov too. So, everything that Elitzer, Aharonov, Cohen, all these two-state vectors, I'm assuming all that. That's all the way it should be. I don't accept Ruth's objections to it. I think that's, but
We can talk at 2:30. Stan.
You brought up Aharonov, and you also mentioned the Beauregard. So the Wikipedia interpretations of quantum mechanics, time symmetry interpretations,
Yes, I'm using all that.
used to be attributed to Aharonov about 6 months ago. About 3 months ago, they changed it, somebody, to the Beauregard. And so the Beauregard.
Maybe I did that.
Or did you do that?
I don't know, I think I might have.
Oh, thank you.
I
He does get
Yeah,
credit.
no, but it all comes from Wheel of Feynman, and before, and I think Wheel of Feynman claimed they stole it from Stuckelberg in 1918 or something
For
like
those who
that.
want to know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
Chris Cochran, sitting next to me,
Yeah.
and I have written this
Yes.
paper on all of that stuff.
Let me just say
With
something
the
else.
Beauregard getting credit.
Yes, but also, it gets back to Feynman's thesis. Feynman's whole PhD was on Lagrangian, why the Lagrangian requires a two-time thing, really, and you need that for quantum theory, okay? And, this famous story with Dirac, when Dirac was sitting and said, is it a proportionality or is it or an analogy? And he said, what about the action principle? Feynman didn't know some of this stuff, But, and also the basic model of what I'm talking about, you have to go back to Feynman's PhD, because really what you want to do is talk about the forced dissipative quantum harmonic oscillator. That's basically what post-quantum theory will correspond to. Yeah, it's in Feynman, yes, I'm very aware of that.
Okay, it's 10:30 and that sounds like a reasonable stopping point, so let's bring the session to a close. Thank all of our speakers and